This is Keith.
And this is Ben, and this is Main Street Lutherans. Today, we get to talk with another podcast. We're going to talk with the Understanding Church podcast out of the Pittsburgh area. Two of our Lutheran churches now collaborate on this podcast. We'll talk with Pastor Wendy Farone and Pastor Dan Smail. But before we do that, let's talk about congregational media. You know, we've mentioned on the podcast that St. Matt's has a radio broadcast that goes out, and you've got a contract and certain things. I think the Good Friday service goes out on the radio, so that'll be coming up.
Yeah, Sunday mornings, 11 o'clock. We're on the radio every week. Our Good Friday noon service is broadcast. Our Thanksgiving Day service is broadcast. Christmas Eve, the 10:30 p.m. service is broadcast. I think that might be the extent of the contract. Yeah, and actually it's time for me to... The signing of the contract always involves a trip to Starbucks, which is nice. I stop by and meet with the station manager, and he brings the contract, and we re-sign it. And yeah, the contract is somewhere around 90 years old.
Wow.
This station is currently owned by the local baseball team, the York Revolution. WOYK was the AM station. They also added an FM station, 98.9 FM. Sports Radio 98.9, they call it.
This is not a sponsorship.
No, it is not. Yeah, it's funny. Their website, I can't corroborate this, but their website says that this is the longest continuous or oldest continuous current Protestant radio broadcast in the United States.
Wow.
As far as they know. It's been happening. Yeah, it started in 1935, I think.
As we know, York likes to collect firsts.
Yeah.
So,
and it may not have been the first. It's just now going.
Longest,
probably others prior to that, but yeah, this one, it's just for whatever reason. Yep, they did it as a surprise to Joe Baker, who was the pastor at the time. In fact, they were trying. I think he may have known that it was coming, that they were adding this radio broadcast. What he didn't know was that they were installing the equipment to do the broadcast in the basement of the parsonage where he lived next door to the church. And they were doing this like on an afternoon, like trying to surprise him that the first time that he stepped into the pulpit on a Sunday morning, and somebody was going to say, and now we're broadcasting live from St. Matthew Lutheran Church in York. Yeah.
Wow.
So what's changed over the years is when the radio station was purchased by the Revs, shortly after that, they made it so that, first off, you could listen to their broadcast through their website.
Mm-hmm.
And then they added the FM station, and then they added an app. And so you can listen to this was a bigger deal a little while ago. Now with the internet being what it is, and website, you can listen anywhere. But when we started getting reports from members of St. Matthew who said, hey, I was on vacation in Nova Scotia and listened to the service on Sunday. Now with the live streams, you can listen to any of the services on YouTube, right? You can go back, or on Facebook. You can go back anytime after the fact. Right. But until those, you can only listen to it live. But the fact that you could listen to it live from anywhere in the world, if you compensated for the time difference, that was pretty cool. Yeah. That was really a big deal. And that was only in the last 10, 15 years.
So right now is radio, are there people that are not part of the congregation that I don't even know how you would know who listens? Radio's very much throwing it out and not getting anything back.
That's entirely true, because the radio station does not do like Nielsen ratings or anything comparable, so they can't tell us how many people listen. And, of course, AM and FM have very different audiences and different reaches, ranges, literally and metaphorically. But now that they have both, I know anecdotally from people. I used to get stories from other pastor colleagues who would say, hey, after my service is done on Sunday, as I'm driving home, I always tune in and listen to St. Matthew. Or, we do get comments from people in the community maybe they stop in for the Christmas dinner or for the, like our food pantry or something, and they'll say, yeah, I listen to you guys on Sundays. Like I said, now with the live stream probably being even more prevalently used than the radio station at this point, I don't know. And yet,
Yeah, and yet if somebody listens to the baseball game on the
mhm,
radio, which is tradition,
right,
their radio will stay on that channel the next time they get in their car.
right,
And so that's very different from YouTube where you have to actually search it every time.
correct. Yeah, you will get incidental listens to this. And, at one point, people used to say it's kind of crummy that, WORK used to be the local talk radio station. And then it became the local sports station, and then it got bought out by the Revs, which now, it's a syndicated station. So they were playing like national sports
Yeah.
sometimes and local sports sometimes and us. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just kind of funny.
Yeah,
But like I said, the contract has been around for a long time, and nobody seems to have any plans to do away with it.
sure. I've known of churches, one particularly in Delaware, Ohio, that has the public access. Like
Hmm.
it sounded like they actually like plugged in a wire and suddenly they were on air on their community access cable channel.
Right.
That there wasn't like it was literally just plugging something in and they took over the channel like some sort of TV pirate or something. But that sort of thing. So there are probably still some of those out there.
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah.
I know a church that I've supplied at, they had a pastor they interviewed who part of his call offer he wanted to be that he could build or the church would build for him a radio tower in the open space behind the church so that he could have his own private radio station like he did at the church he was serving up north in Michigan, either in northern Michigan or the UP, so he could broadcast messages. So he'd have his own private station that was FCC registered and stuff,
Right.
which they said no to. And so he never did start there. But Detroit has sort of a history of pastors taking over radio stations.
Okay.
Father Conklin, back in the 1930s, had a very pro-Nazi agenda. He was a Catholic priest and was very much in favor of Hitler and had a radio program that advertised that.
Right.
And so I think people in Metro Detroit anyway are a little more questionable of that sort of thing because it wasn't a service; it was talk radio that he was doing,
Okay.
and doing his advocacy there. So so yeah,
Yeah. And, when we were recording with the Understanding Lutheran or Understanding Church folks, sorry, you made a comment at one point. I'm not sure if it was while we were recording with them or it was in the conversation we had before that, where you said, those with the loudest microphone are the ones that are heard. And
right,
there was a time when, radio, television, whether it was public access or not, yeah, that was, like, that's who you could hear. That was it.
yeah,
Now we're literally podcasting,
right,
which anybody can do.
right,
Um, and, so whether it's a podcasting platform or YouTube or whatever, now suddenly, like, yeah, loudest microphone gets heard, but literally now everybody can have a microphone.
yeah.
Now we're just all slaves to the algorithms of, who gets promoted and who gets,
Or
likes.
what our friends are listening to,
Hmm.
and so like understanding church when so Wendy Farone, Pastor Wendy Farone, is in my class at United Lutheran Seminary. She's auditing this class just to stay in the school space. But so we ran into each other as podcast people that way. And so I started listening to their podcast, and I think it's really interesting. It's very different from what we do. It has a focus on their context, and it's expanded a little bit, and then we'll talk about that here in our chat. And so it's really interesting. But I think one of the big takeaways from this is that churches can do this,
Right.
and that's what it. As you listen to this, think about what might you do for your congregation or for your community that might make an impact. And would this help? If you do, if you want to try it, feel free to contact us. I'll I'll help you get started with some stuff.
By us, he means him. Ben's the one with all the technical know-how of how this works.
But it's not that hard. I can do it.
Yeah.
And here's our chat with the Understanding Church podcast. So with us today, we have the folks from the Understanding Church podcast, Pastor Wendy Farone and Pastor Dan Smail. It's so good to have you here. I've been listening to your podcast. It's excellent. I love the content there. So before we get into the podcast itself, tell us about yourselves. Go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you. I'm Wendy Farone, and I'm a pastor at Faith Lutheran Church in White Oak, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I'm Pastor Dan Smail, one of the pastors here at Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Glenshaw, Pennsylvania, which is essentially the northern suburbs of Pittsburgh.
Awesome. And so you've got this podcast, Understanding Church. I think did it have a prior name?
It did.
It did. Yeah, it did. It was called, well, I was a congregant member at Bethlehem at Pastor Dan's church for, I guess, 7 years or so before I received a call into ministry. So it was called Bethlehem Back Chat. And so we transferred that when I moved out of Bethlehem to get my own church to something that didn't seem like it fit one church or the other. So Understanding Church, we went through all kinds of different name ideas, and most of them were taken. But for some odd reason, Understanding Church was not. So we grabbed that one.
And I think it was probably a more appropriate name in terms of where we had evolved.
That's right.
Content.
Speaking of evolving, let's back up a little bit. What was your original purpose in starting the podcast?
Well, the original purpose was just to address congregational questions. So we would be moving through the church year, embracing liturgy, and folks would say, why do we have 4 lessons every week? Where do these lessons come from? Really, and which is a tremendous question. The fact that that kind of curiosity was present within the pews was a gift to us, and we thought there was an opportunity to address some of those questions and deepen folks' experience as they invested in the life of the church.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you that this podcast was kind of the catalyst, along with the guidance and care from Pastor Dan, that made me aware of a seminary might be in my future, because I had a million questions. And I've been a lifelong Lutheran, and I would think that someone as a lifelong Lutheran should have this all figured out, right? I didn't. And I didn't want to appear dumb, so I often just didn't ask the question. So I thought, what a great idea. I don't even know how long I'd been at the church. And I approached Pastor Dan. We were having coffee at Starbucks, and I said, how would you feel about doing a podcast? I had no idea how to do a podcast. I didn't have the equipment. I don't know. I just wanted my questions answered without looking dumb. So I asked questions. You'll see in the earlier episodes, I'll say things like, what's that? All that stuff you put over the chalice on the altar. And what do you do all of that for? And why do you sing the Holy, Holy, Holy? What's that mean? And so this gave me a way to answer the questions I had, figuring other people would have the exact same questions.
Yeah, that's really great.
And to be fair, it doesn't hurt for clergy types to dig back into the texts and do some research and clarify their thinking.
Yeah,
too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and to remind ourselves exactly why we do some of these things too, so that background, even in some small subtle way, comes out in how they're applied. Mm-hmm. We've got we're using a Lenten series right now from Barnge's Publishing, Barnge's Worship, called All In for Lent. And one of the preaching examples that every week they've got a tie-in to a liturgical practice, liturgical act, or some part of the service. And a couple of weeks ago, it was the Eucharistic prayer, and it described, why does the Eucharistic prayer always start with, the great Thanksgiving portion of it? Why does it begin with the backstory of creation and Israel and leading into Jesus, and then end up with the Holy Spirit and the church today. Like, why does that pattern exist? And then they said, mention this in the sermon, and then bring it out when you actually recite the prayer that day. Try to just emphasize the fact that this is a really amazing story. And sorry, that's just an example of how, I think you're absolutely right to be pursuing those questions for us as clergy, because people want to know them.
Well, and I think it's so easy for all of us to go through the motions. If you're invested in that rhythm every week, it's so tempting to just assume we have it on lockdown, and there's a comfort in that predictability and the routine, but almost everything we say and do, and this is not an exaggeration, it's dripping with meaning.
Right.
Just dripping with meaning that's already present there. And then there's even more meaning that we're being drawn into.
Mm-hmm.
And so a part of what we need to do more systematically is just set the table, just like you described, just set the table and invite folks to partake of all of the beauty and the richness of the tradition that we're invested in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when and why then did the podcast kind of shift directions? I mean, we heard Wendy say about, moving into a different congregational setting, and so you needed something that was a broader title, but did your topics also shift at some point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's really what I was driving at with the Understanding Church name. I mean, there's two things going on there. One is sort of the cognitive understanding, and the second is the identity of, no, we really are a church where this kind of deliberation and curiosity is welcome. So that was helpful to sort of rebrand a little bit and deepen our own sense of identity. But the questions over time began to shift. Wendy, feel free to jump in and correct at any time. But really, we had feedback from the folks that were listening, and I'm sure both of you have realized this too. There was a sense of, there were some questions about the local experience, the provincial experience, but then questions about the larger church. Who are we as a body of Christ, as a denomination? What's distinctive about our experience? Does that still matter? And those larger, broader questions started to reshape our intention in terms of production and the guests that we were inviting and those kinds of things.
And Pastor Dan has allowed me the grace of being able to the ideas just pop in my head, and I send him a note and say, "Hey, we're going to talk about," and he goes, "Sounds good to me."
Yeah.
And I used to, we've done this, I think 7-8 years we've done this, and we offer these monthly, but we started out, our very first one was 2018, and we started out with the goal of prayer, and topics that just popped up, like, why do we have saints? Isn't that not a Lutheran thing? And understanding, like, who we are as a body. What is sin? Do we believe in hell? Where's heaven? What is? And I think one of the ones that really touches base with what we've been in conversation about, and that is kind of an annotation of the worship service. And that was the only podcast that took us 2 episodes because we got into it.
Yeah.
It was great. It was great. But the topics often surround those things that pop into my head, or in my congregation, somebody will ask me something and I'll think, there you go. That's when we need to talk about. And when we transferred to Understanding Church, Pastor Dan had the great idea of bringing in more guest speakers, people from local Lutheran services that are available. We've had many folks like the bishop, our past bishop, Kurt Cussero, and our new bishop, Melissa Stoller, have both come onto our podcast. And I believe in our synod, there used to be another podcast, but I think we're it now. Yeah.
And is your target audience still primarily, members of your own congregation or local Lutheran church members, or do you feel like you actually speak to a wider audience?
I think originally the target definitely was the congregation, and then we thought, well, we'll expand this to 2 congregations. But I mean, based upon the emails and the feedback that we're getting, in some ways, it's sobering to realize if you put something out there, folks are gonna folks are gonna find, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, but folks
Yeah.
are gonna find it, and you're gonna be surprised by how that kind of takes on a life of its own and who that gets shared with. And so in terms of the audience, it definitely is expanded for sure. But I think at the heart of what we're doing, in the back of our minds, we're still focused. As I'm recording, I'm still thinking about the folks within our contexts that are going to receive this and
Sure.
what's important to them. Yeah.
Sure. And as far as ecumenicalism, are other congregations in your area? I know there are a lot of Presbyterians in the Pittsburgh area,
hmm
for sure. How do you consider, if has anybody, from a different denomination sort of raised their hand and said, "Hey, I'm listening to this too"? Anything like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, Wendy went to the local, as she did her seminary experience, she was invested in the local Presbyterian seminary. So I'm sure, Wendy, you had some interaction with that denominational expression.
Well, sure. And I'm glad that we have Understanding Church as the title now, because it doesn't seem like it's Lutheran that turns people away or says, well, I'm not Lutheran, so that doesn't apply to me.
Right.
It's more liturgical. There are the creeds and some confession that we do talk about in there, but oftentimes I'll be in conversation in a class or speaking to folks, and I'll say, we have a podcast on that you might want to listen
Right.
to. And so, but I don't necessarily track where they come from.
Yeah.
I just look at a number, and if it's exceeding my expectations, I'll send it to Pastor Dan and say, well, we've got a lot of attention
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
Well, and full disclosure, Wendy is auditing a class that I'm taking at United Lutheran Seminary. And so that's how we met.
Yes.
It actually came up that way. Wendy said, "Hey, I've got a podcast." And I forget what it was in relationship to. And then it turns out one of our classmates is a listener. She'd actually sent me a message, I think earlier that day in that class. "Hey, I was just listening to you and Keith." And so she chimed in,
Nice.
"Oh, Ben has one too." And so it's
Yeah.
pretty funny that way.
Very
I wonder how
nice.
many of our classmates have podcasts and they just don't want to talk about it.
Mhm.
Right.
We shouted from the rooftops.
God bless
Yeah.
them if they do. Yeah.
So,
It's strange how it has evolved, because it started out truly very basic, and I watched YouTube to figure out how to do it, and we tried it off a laptop. We tried it off, like, totally lacking in technology knowledge around that type of
Yeah.
thing. And after we have, I believe, 75 episodes at this point, it has evolved to where I have an H6 recorder, I have 2 nice microphones. I do Audacity to do the editing, and I upload it to Buzzsprout. Bingo, there it is, and it goes everywhere. And
yeah.
what that has allowed us to do is to reach beyond our own church doors, and to make it so simple that it doesn't become a part-time job for me. It takes maybe, for those who are interested in creating a podcast, it takes a little knowledge and a whole bunch of screw ups, and then you think, okay, I think I've got this, and I usually about 4 hours is what it takes me to get it done.
Yeah. We can talk about how congregations might want to do this sort of thing. I think it's a really interesting tool that way.
Mhm.
I noticed that, so you started before the pandemic. If you started in 2018,
Yes. Yes.
a lot of the reasons podcasts sort of soared in 2020 and 2021 was the people couldn't get out.
That's right.
And so they found a way of distributing this stuff a little broad. It's also a very inexpensive way to do it. Buzzsprout, it can be free. And so it's a really interesting way, and we can I'm happy to share details on that. I'm gonna guess that you are too, Wendy.
Yes,
As far as
absolutely.
advice on how to do these things. So
Exactly right.
but I think the key, and I think you talked about this a little bit, is just to get started.
Right.
Yes.
That your first episodes, well, people go back to listen to our first few episodes quite often, and you sort of get a little unnerved by that. Like,
Well,
I
and you
messed
have
up in this way.
you have a technology background, so you can imagine I was just
Oh,
bumping
right.
in the dark, and truly YouTube is the ticket, or Ben is the ticket. I just was there. I got to tell you a couple stories that we banged our knees a little bit. My favorite one was when I hit the wrong button on the second time we re-recorded because I didn't hit the right button the first time. So the third time, I think it was on Noah, and and finally, Pastor Dan is the patience of Job. No kidding.
No,
And
I think it was poignant that the recording of that podcast stretched over 40 days. 40 days.
You knew it was over when the dove came in,
That's
That's exactly
when we saw
right.
the dove outside the window.
or in my case, from the story we were talking about earlier, the giant turkey flying through the air
That's right.
in Monroeville. Yeah.
And so I had Bishop Kurt Cusserow, who's a dear friend, and we did this beautiful this beautiful recording, and I looked down and went white. I never hit record
Yeah.
because I was so immersed in the conversation. I never hit record.
Yeah.
And he said, well, it's probably always better the second time anyway. And I thought, how am I holding back tears? It's because he was so kind and so graceful. And Pastor Dan, he can poke fun at me every now and then and say, don't throw the script away because we don't know if it's recorded or not.
Yeah.
But we're getting better. We're getting better.
And I think you just anticipate some of that stuff as you go. And if it's a part of the fun, you'll meet with success. And I think that the warmth of the rapport that you develop over the years is a gift to the folks that are listening.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if you have a couple of extra runs, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Keith and I, some of the behind the scenes for us is we talk nearly every Monday, whether we record or not.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been friends for a long, long time. And it wasn't really till we started doing this that we got to actually see each other and share about our families and stuff. Since that. And clergy in particular have a tendency to sort of move long distances, away from friends and family. You have these connections you've built up. And so this technology makes it real easy to do that, but the podcast becomes an excuse in some ways. And so
Yeah, Ben and I, we were really close in college. He's actually the godfather of my oldest child, who's now 26 years old and getting ready to have a child of their own. But, he and I hadn't really been in a lot of contact with each other for a long time, except, the occasional phone call or email exchange. And so, the podcast has become a way of us, really reconnecting our own friendship as well.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm curious, how did things shift for you, or maybe they didn't, during the pandemic in terms of, your process, your focus?
Yeah. I try to block
timing.
that time out as much as I can. So
I don't remember a thing.
no,
I understand.
no, just kidding. We were pretty intentional about any guidelines that the Congregation Council set. We were sure to follow. So we did the whole. I think we even masked Wendy and social distancing, and Wendy was gracious enough to sort of come in and get everything set up, and then I would sneak in and we would keep our distance and get a recording done.
Okay, so apart from some logistical changes, it really didn't break your stride at all to just keep putting out
Not
material.
really.
Okay,
It was our saving grace because it was our excuse to get out and to be with a human person, because I live alone. It's a little lonely, right? So when you get an opportunity to be in a situation where you can learn and laugh and be present with other people safely, it was really a gift during that time. Yeah.
We have that experience in St. Matthew because we do have a radio broadcast on Sunday mornings, and when we were not worshiping live in person for the better part of a year, I think we pre-recorded those services, and so there was no congregation present, but myself and the music director and our organist and my my colleague, my pastor colleague, and the two guys that took care of the technical stuff, we all got to see each other once a week,
Yeah.
for a couple of hours, and it really was meaningful in that time. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Sure.
So
We have recorded in some really weird places. We were on mission trip and did a recording from a mission trip. We were in Appalachia, and my favorite one, we went to North Park, which was just a big,
Local
expansive
county
park
park,
near
yeah.
us. Yeah. And the person that we were planning on having a sound person with us, and that didn't work. So we opened the hatch of Pastor Dan's Subaru, stuck my laptop in there, and put two lawn chairs out and leaned into the hatch to record our podcast. You
Yeah.
can hear people talking in the background. It was really sweet.
Yeah, we had a program called Fit Church that our
Uh-huh.
congregation was invested in, and bi-weekly through the summer, folks would gather at the local park, and some would sit around and chat, some would take a nice walk, some would play tennis, um, and then at the end we had a nice time of discussion, devotion, study. So
hmm
we were trying to capture the energy of that moment. I don't know how well we did or we didn't, but we again gave it a whirl.
We did. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing about podcasting is that, when you're talking about just one or two people involved in it, and then the one or two guests that you might have at any given moment, it really does become like a bit of a playground to just
hmm
experiment and just say, what can we do with this?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to take a guess that having stepped out into doing the podcast, doing the audio recording, editing sound, that thing, made
hmm
it easier to trust yourself to go that step to the full broadcast when COVID hit. That having taken that step unknowingly and knowing that you could do it made it a lot easier to take that next step.
Absolutely. And ignorance is bliss. I didn't know. So I just went forward and tried a bunch of stuff. And whatever worked, that's what we stuck with. I mean, we used to have, a sound board and a whatever you do and the big mics and all that stuff. And really, simplicity has worked really well for us. That the little H6 recorder is just incredible sound wise, and the right microphones are important. But it'll and there's confidence now in that I know what I'm doing, sort of, because it gets glitchy. And Audacity won't upload the tracks, and I start to panic. Well, I won't panic anymore. I'll just call you, Ben. But you've got a friend, buddy.
Yeah.
So that's a
But
Zoom. Just so I'm keeping notes here. That's a Zoom H6.
it is.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I can't figure out. I think I've got a P4 or something like that, and I can't
Uh-huh.
figure it out. So
Oh,
I might
well.
not be any help.
Oh,
I'll have to
well.
call you.
Yeah, no kidding. But and then, like I said, just build confidence, and the folks around you give you the wiggle room to make mistakes and to try it again. And uh, it really has been an ongoing. Like, I'm amazed that we have gotten this long, Pastor Dan. You
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Because I mean, when we started, I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't anticipate the response that we got, but
Mhm, mhm,
it's been a blessing. I mean, and because just back to the conversation piece, the folks who are waiting for episodes to come to land,
mhm.
they feel like we get the sense that they feel like they're part of the conversation, and I think that's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
So
I've gotten feedback like, I'm so glad you did that podcast. I always wondered about that.
Right.
And I think that's what we're reaching for, is those questions that I always had as a person who's been in the pews for years and didn't understand it. Um, I wanted to ask those questions that everybody's kind of embarrassed or kind of unsure or
yeah.
apprehensive to ask, and to get those answers. And people will call and say, ask them about this. So I
Yes,
do.
that's true.
Yeah, the questions that they assume they're already supposed to know the answer to,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
and don't
Yeah.
get it. Yeah.
When our answers that we have are developed over thousands of years now, right?
Yeah. Mhm,
And our core things going back to, the beginning of time for us, that uh, People don't just figure this out on their own. That's why we have community, is that
Right.
That's right.
we
Mhm.
develop on this. And that's part of why it's important to have a denomination, I feel, is that we have that structure to be able to share that
That's right.
going forward. So, yeah.
Well, and I don't know how people, and I do always share this with my folks, that I don't know how you are expected to understand it. When I went to seminary, and I still am not sure. So
That's right.
I learn every day.
Well, I think that that's important to note too. I mean, the style of the podcast we do it, historically, not as much now, but was, Wendy posing a question. But this was not like a late night television program. It was an offhanded interview.
Yeah.
She was kidding around about the scripts earlier, but there would be a produced script that we would spend time with. But then, and I don't think we still have any of these laying around, but in the margins of those scripts were another 2 pages of like handwritten notes and that were
Mm-hmm.
all about, just like you're talking about, Ben, sort of retrieving the denominational identity and reaching back into the shared history and trying our best to faithfully articulate the witness that's been offered to us in the past so that we could have a legitimate voice in this space. It wasn't just spur of the moment. Oh, here's what I think about that. Not that
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't happen sometimes, but the bulk of it was an attempt to be thoughtful about the questions. Yeah.
Yeah. And now, and this is how, if someone is interested in a podcast, so you start out with something more scripted. I could hear Pastor Dan in my ear when I was writing it. And I would write and I'd say, well, you know what he might say. And then sometimes I would just write a little paragraph, say, I don't know, clueless, you fill this in. But now we're at a point where I just write lead questions that I probably will come up with. And then we just talk back and forth. It's the foundation is there and it's built. And we just talk back and forth and poke fun and laugh and do goofy stuff. And sometimes we just say, I'll edit that out.
And a part of what we do is empower. Now that we do have more guests, we try to
Yes.
empower the guests to
Hmm.
feel comfortable and lift up their voice
Yes.
in a way that's constructive for
Sure.
all of us. Yeah.
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 Let's say I'm at a congregation. We are trying to figure out how to reach out to folks. This idea of a podcast sounds interesting.
Hmm.
What do you think the best way to get started would be to produce a podcast, maybe for my local, my congregation, or maybe for some surrounding churches, maybe if we've got a 3-point parish to
Hmm.
share among all those three? What do you think?
Yeah. First things first, before you buy any equipment or set up a script or a schedule, I would spend some time at coffee hour during a Sunday school session, whatever the case may be, where you have some contact with your folks to ascertain whether or not people are dialed into the podcast deal. Because I think that that's important. Um, we knew going in that we had a fair number of people within the congregation that already had Apple Podcasts up on their phone and were, you know, subscribing to their favorites. So it was an easy point
They
of
would just add
connection.
it.
Correct. It
Hmm.
was an
Yeah.
easy point of connection, and folks were in the habit of driving to work and listening to those kinds of things. And that was a huge boon for us
Yeah.
because we were able to build momentum early.
And then
Uh,
they can share how to subscribe to with other folks.
so that's the next thing.
Yeah.
You have to have patience. The folks that are less tech savvy, and I'm not even going to say this is necessarily connected to age, but the folks that are less tech savvy, just be prepared for them to come into your office with their iPad or their phone, saying,
You do this.
yes, say, tell me how
Yeah.
that goes, which is a gift, obviously. But honestly, all kidding aside, that's the first thing. If you're in a context where folks just are not plugged into that form of media, it might behoove you to invest in something that's more accessible. But if you've got some of that energy uh, and you've got folks that are interested, that's a great place. That's a great place to start. And then the second question is, what are you interested in? What do you really want to hear about? Is it liturgy? Is it theology? Is it biblical studies? And once you get a sense of where folks' interests actually lie, then your investment can be reflective of that, and then meet the need.
And the accessibility issue is if they don't have the right phone or don't really deal with that phone issue. I also upload it to our websites, mine and his, and it's also the link to the website upload is on our Synod weekly announcements and on the weekly announcements we send to each of our congregations. So all they have to do is click a link.
Yeah.
So they can listen through the website without going to a streaming app.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. And I'll tell you, it's one of those things where if you're feeling pulled toward doing something this way and is way out of the loop for you, this is really odd to you, like I don't know, it sounds like fun, but I don't know a thing. That's a good time to just take the leap and just learn. It might be for you, it might not be for you, but try it.
Give it a whirl.
Yeah, give it a whirl. It's something new to learn. And there are thousands, as Ben, you were mentioning during the pandemic, or thousands of podcasts were put out there.
And those are just mine.
Yeah, they're just yours. Our goal was never to compete in that market.
Yeah.
It was to inform our congregations and the listeners who are interested in that topic. So we don't really pay much attention to numbers. I mean, if they were in the zeros or something, I think, well, that's a dud. I think we're done. But it has never been that way. People are saying, when's your next episode coming out? And that is reinforcement that we're on the right track still.
And I think from our experience, we look at the numbers mostly to see what people are sharing, because we have specific episodes like with Dr. Granquist about the history of the Lutheran Church starting at the Reformation up to today. And those are very popular episodes, because it's, we know that it's something that people don't get a lot of. You have to take a couple courses at seminary to get that full spectrum.
That's right.
And so it's not something that you can just pick up one book even and get that. And so having somebody that can share that is really great. And we have some episodes that we think are important to have. Because of who we're reaching to, they may not get listened to very often. We have a couple episodes that get a lot of comments. People want to yell at us about these things, but it's because it's a topic that our church gets a lot of criticism over, and so it just naturally happens. But so we pay attention to that. But it shouldn't be the main driver, right?
That's right.
It's going after the one. If it serves a need anywhere, it's worth doing. So
I was the one that I started it, and I was the lost sheep. So you can do it too.
That's right.
Well, Ben, Keith, I'm interested, as you made your way through your trajectory of episodes and you were discerning what it was that you wanted to talk about. Were there moments that were surprising to you? For instance, were there aspects of that Lutheran church history piece that were really, really compelling to the listeners that you heard back about? Did you have some surprises along the way? I mean, I know there are topics that folks are really, really passionate about and we're bound to hear about, but were there other aspects of what you were pulling together in the podcast that were really engaging to folks?
I think the number one surprise for me is that people were willing to talk to us about stuff. Well, you know how it is. You go through the seasons, and there are times when people just aren't available.
Right.
And you go through that for 2 or 3 months, and then all of a sudden everybody's available again. And so and then you find out that, this person, I never thought, I heard them on a big podcast, so I reached out to them, and they actually made time for us. We've had a couple of those that, like, there's no way we'd get to talk to this guy. He's, on a book tour and all this, but we get to talk to them.
Yeah. Or even Imran, this guy's the vice president of the ELCA, and he's been on our show 3 times.
Wow. Well, get the word out. That's how you do it.
Wonderful.
Yeah, when you take the time. One of the things that surprises me is, how many times people have listened to and commented on the first couple of episodes that were just about me and Ben and like what we were trying to do. with this podcast and what our own experience and background was, kind of how we came to even want to do this. And those are some of the episodes that get listened to a lot. I don't know why.
And one more quick question. As we were, and I still do this, but as we were developing our podcast and really working hard to fine tune the details, I spent a lot of time listening to other podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And not just church podcasts,
Right.
preaching podcasts, but just a wide range of popular, less popular. In terms of your own consumption of that material, are there podcasts out there besides your own, but which is obviously very, very well received and well produced, but are there other podcasts out there that you would encourage folks to listen to as they are developing their own work? As an example of something that's high quality and worth your time.
I think a lot of the NPR shows,
Gotcha.
they've got like shortwave science podcast and some of their news shows. There are I listen to some political podcasts that come from large organizations and seeing their structure. Our idea of having an A, B, and C segment. So there's sort of an opening
Mm-hmm.
with a short conversation, then we get to the meat of it, and then the close. Um, I think it's similar to well, when I took a class on preaching for my LLM studies, the idea of having that format that sort of encapsulates things and helps people draw attention to certain things. And it also allows people to skip
Yeah.
to the meat if they
Right.
want to and,
Fair
and
enough.
stop. They know when we reach the end. And if they're not driving, they might just, skip through the rest of it. But so I think that's a lot of it. Um, yeah. And the other thing is you listen to enough podcasts and you find out that the people I listened to what is it? Up First from NPR. One Saturday morning, they had taken a track and shifted it about 4 minutes in the middle of this. And so there was empty space, just silence, where an interview was supposed to happen. And then they got to the next piece that introduced the next segment, and the interview that was supposed to happen overlapped the second
Oh, yeah.
interview in that thing. And so, as a producer, you realize I'm not the only one making mistakes, right?
Right.
These people have
Yeah, it
they're on a
happens.
much shorter timeline. They produce
Yeah.
it, at 3 a.m. and have it out by 7, but even they make mistakes. And so do that. And I listen to other podcasts, people we've talked to, I subscribe to all the podcasts that we talk to on this show. And occasionally I'll mention, I'll hear something and I'll be able to say something because I think I've come to realize that if we make mistakes that are correctable, it's less likely that somebody will point it out because they want to be gracious to us,
Right.
right? And I don't want that to happen. So I listen to our show, which is something a lot of people don't do. They don't listen to themselves because it's a lot. Um, but so being able to be that honest feedback to somebody and get in touch with them and say, hey, just to let you know, is kind of a good thing to do, I find. So
Yeah.
don't just, sin boldly, right?
Right on.
That's
If that-
right.
Especially if that sin is making a cut somewhere or leaving an extra in place, right?
Right.
Exactly right. And it'll, the thing of it is the error is not trying. Just try it and see where it goes. And there's so many folks who have invested time in doing this over time that they can help you along now. Like I said, YouTube, pandemic and YouTube helped me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. Thanks
thank
so
you so
much for
much.
joining us here.
Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah.
Grateful for your work too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll continue to listen and see what's coming up. Any big topics, anything you're excited about coming up in the future on the show?
Well, I have to think of one.
Well,
Yeah.
I would suggest that I was just looking it up. So if you
Yeah.
just happen to have an episode on Sean Copeland's Body, Race, and Being that can work out to about 1,000-word essay, maybe by, when is that due? April 8th.
Yeah.
Oh, you need that done for you, do you? Okay.
Yeah. Consider it done.
That's
Not
right.
a problem. Not a problem at all.
Pastor Dan's the writer. He just finished his dissertation not too long ago. He's still in the mood. Yeah.
No, not a
Oh,
problem at
wow.
all.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Like
Thank you.
like human manipulated AI.
That's right.
Right.
Don't
Well,
worry, the professors will never spot that.
That's right.
I know.
Well, it's like you get on Reddit and people ask questions, and it's a term paper they're about to write. So they ask historians or something.
Right.
Like, yeah, this is term paper. So
Yeah, thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate the time, and really and truly is a joy to be with you for the episode, and a joy to catch up before we pressed record as well.
yeah,
Blessings to
Yeah,
both of you and
likewise.
families.
Yeah. Thank you. This is
Just
your
delightful
story.
opportunity. Thank you.
Your story is inspiring for me because, I can say I feel like you guys are so much more polished and directed and intentional than we are, and that's encouraging because I love listening to how your show has evolved and thinking back about our own and yeah. So
Very
thank
good.
you for the time.
Oh,
and
thank
I
you.
should note they're shaking their heads in disbelief. So
Yeah, true.
And I've said this before, and Ben, you can probably edit this out later because you've heard me say it a million times, and it's been on the show a million times. I always say Ben is the host of Main Street Lutherans. I am only the co-host. He does all the hard work. I just show up and record. And occasionally,
Yeah, I know the
read
feeling, man. I know the
sometimes read some stuff in advance.
until next time,
Yeah,
he's going to produce that one all on his own.
right. But
Pastor Dan is the brains of the operation, and he makes sure I don't do anything heretical
No.
in my speech.
No,
We need that.
yeah, we don't have one of those. I'm sure we've been heretical more than once.
That's okay. Sin boldly.
yeah, we gotta
But like Ben said,
choose your heresy and stick with it.
when we
That's right.
meet, we meet month or weekly on Mondays, whether we're recording or not, and a lot of times we spend that time reading
Yes.
material online, and and Ben in particular is an incredibly fast reader, and I'm always struggling to keep up with what's going on. So,
Yeah, and I
anyway.
mean that's the other thing I would say, and you could feel free to edit this out too, but in terms of relevance, in terms of the value of these kinds of conversations, I really am convicted that we are truly in a season at the moment in which theology and faithful theology is as important as it has ever been. And so the more frequently we can create the time and space to have thoughtful, faithful, reasonable conversations about what it is that God is calling us to, all the better. And I think that that's across the church. I mean,
Agreed.
as folks are considering, developing a podcast, that God bless you, that might be a great idea and it'll be a lot of fun. But I want to just lift up the reality that it's also important. I mean, this is critical work, and really, really essential in terms of getting some really well-grounded voices out into the atmosphere, so to speak.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, that's not going to get edited out.
Okay.
In fact, that's
Yeah.
probably going to be the promo.
That's
Yay.
going to be the trailer.
Yeah.
So
Well done, Dan.
Well,
Thank
Dan
you.
and Wendy, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
It's our pleasure.
We really
Yeah, no
enjoyed
doubt
it.
about
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm grateful for this conversation and for all that you're engaged about.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll catch up eventually, guys, somewhere
Yeah.
within the ins and outs of the church, maybe at the seminary or a regional gathering or something
I
like
got
that.
an ordination coming up somewhere around 2070.
Okay. I'll listen if I can, I'll be there, man. Let me know, Ben.
We could
You know,
road trip it.
It's only,
Sure.
it's only 60 some years away, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you appreciated that conversation. I certainly did. I learned a lot. This, like I said before, this podcast is quite interesting. They have a nice approach to talking about theological topics or praxis, how we practice our religion, our service. that sort of stuff. One of the more recent episodes, at least at the time we're recording, is about why we have the Old Testament. Why didn't we just get rid of it? And so some questions like that that you might think while listening to your pastor, but your pastor won't acknowledge that you're waving your hand to ask a question.
Yeah, it was fun to chat with people who have a very similar motivation to you and me.
Started from a different place, but
yeah, and have gone in a different direction, and so we're certainly not in competition since none of us are making any money doing this, but but it was really cool to hear people that have had a similar idea and yet different and gone their own way with it, and how that enriches all of us and just provides more opportunities. I'm really looking forward to promoting the Understanding Church podcast in my congregation, because I think that there are people that will benefit from that. And I could answer some of those questions myself, but why? These two really smart, approachable pastors have done this. It's a great resource that they have been willing to put out not only into their own congregation, but also out into the world for other people to use. So I'm excited to be able to share it.
And there's several others like that. They're generally YouTube ideas. I struggle in calling something on YouTube a podcast, but the newly installed bishop in Metro New York does a lot of explaining Lutheranism on a YouTube channel. I'll add a link to that in the episode notes. And I think one of the Synod in North Carolina, I think they have quite a bit of resources on that sort of thing too. But I think at the congregational level, you get more of the ideas that happen when you're sitting in the pew listening to these things, and you think, well, what did because we only usually talk about one of the four texts if we read all four texts, and the other ones have things to think about, and they don't get addressed, and so this is a sort of a chance to do that.
Well, I guess that's it for today then. Main Street Lutherans is hosted by Keith Fair and Ben Fote, and the show is produced by Fote Media Productions. You can find all of our contact information, links, and a transcript to this episode in the episode notes. Until next time, go in peace, serve the Lord.
Thanks be to God.